Hello guys, how are all of you doing today? Welcome to another episode of the Eczema Podcast. I am so happy that you are here and that I get to share new information with you today. Did you know that nearly 1/3 of adults with eczema have challenges in school or their work life? And 14% believe that academic or career progression has been hindered by their eczema. And nearly 40% of patients with eczema report that they turn down a job or an educational opportunity because of it. And that is so common these days. We miss a lot of work days, we turn down job opportunities. I often get messages about how people are scared to not only cope at their job, but also to be at job interviews because they are afraid of getting a job and also just what their employer might think of them when they see that they have eczema. And that is a hard part. And today I have a guest on the show who will talk about mental coping strategies to deal with topical steroid withdrawal. And she's also had eczema for most of her life as well, and she's used steroids for a large part of it. So I hope that her coping strategies will be able to help you. And before we start, I also wanted to share a really cool testimony from my 8-week group coaching program. It just really makes me so happy whenever I hear that someone has had a result. And I remember before she joined, she tried a lot of things. So just want to play this short clip for you before we begin with today's podcast.
I just want to say thank you so much for being there. And, it's just been great to have other people that, are having the same experience as you. And, this has really been helpful because I was even at the point where I was just I've spent so much money. Should I even do this? This is another thing. I'm just, putting myself further debt. But I realized that, this has really helped a lot. And so I just want to say thank you, for just being there and, helping to guide me and the information that you have. And so, it's just been really helpful, finally having somebody that understand what you're going through and you're able to, go to them and, have that support. So I just want to say thank you.
And I also just want to add that I remember when I first did my webinar, that's where you first heard about the coaching program.
Yes.
And I remember during that webinar, I saw you in the chats a lot, and you were mentioning that you tried so many things. You spent I can't remember if you said hundreds or thousands of dollars. And
thousands.
Wow. Because you said, nothing is working, and you just had lost so much hope. And to see you on this call and to hear your progress, it's really, really encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even believe it, honestly, because like I said, when we first started having our calls, I was still kind of curled up in the ball and I'd be itching and flaking all over the place. And, right now, as I talk to you guys, I'm cleaning and, doing stuff around the house and just, such a difference. So yeah, thank you.
That is just a short clip from one of our last calls with one of the participants in our program. And I just want to encourage you that there are so many coaching groups out there, support groups. You don't have to join mine, but I'm just trying to show you the power of actually having support out there. Whether it's me or someone else, I think that as long as you can find someone who can support you, that it is so great. And remember, you can always reach out to me on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm at Eczema Conquerors. And I have a lot of videos on YouTube, but you can always reach out to me on social media. I can always give you recommendations, practitioners to see, groups to join if you're ever interested. And you can also follow my eczema healing journey there as well. And without further ado, let's start today's podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the Eczema Podcast, where you'll learn tips, products, and natural eczema remedies from Abby, registered holistic nutritionist and founder of eczemaconquerors.com. Stay tuned as she invites experts in the field. Here's your host of the Eczema Podcast, Abby.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Eczema Podcast. I am so great to have you guys back listening to another episode. And today I have a very special guest who is here. She's actually a good friend of mine, and she was also part of my 8-week group coaching program as well. And it has just been such an honor to see her soar and just the changes that she's made. I feel like she's made such a huge change in her skin, in her mindset. And today she's just going to share about her story about going through topical steroid withdrawal and how she went through it, and also her coping strategies. So I am so excited to have her on the show. Her name is Cassie. She's a registered she's registered nurse. And I'm going to let her share a little bit more about herself, who she is, and also how her topical steroid withdrawal journey started. So hi, Cassie.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me, Abby. I'm so excited to finally be doing this.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
So my name is Cassie. I am a registered nurse. I also am a holistic eczema lifestyle blogger as the naturalistic nurse, and I am a sound healer based in the Los Angeles area. And as for my relationship with eczema, I have had moderate to severe eczema for most of my life, like over 20 years. And in the past few years, I've gone through a very difficult topical steroid withdrawal, through which I primarily healed through drastic lifestyle and diet change.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's just so amazing to hear your journey. So can you bring us back to when it all started, when you decided to stop topical steroids and make a change, and what that was like?
Yeah, of course. So I decided to stop using topical steroids on my skin completely back in about 2015. And until then, I had used topical steroids on and off throughout my whole life. And I remember during this time, I was in nursing school, so I was going through a very stressful time in my life. And all of a sudden, it didn't seem like there was any specific trigger at this time, my skin started going nuts. And my eczema just started blowing up all over my arms, on my neck. And at that time, I actually had never had eczema on my neck or on my face. And for the first time in my life, that's when it was first starting to pop up. And I remember going to the doctor for probably like the 100th time and just getting more topical steroids from them. And I just remember feeling so defeated. And I had used this specific medication on my skin for a couple weeks at this point. And I remember putting it on my skin, burned so badly. But it was the only thing that my doctor was able to give me. So it was kind of like a catch-22, like, do I just continue living in this pain of my eczema, or do I continue putting this medicine on that still causes me pain? Either way, it doesn't seem to be a real fix. So that was kind of the last straw for me, and I just decided to stop using steroids altogether. And that was actually the last time I even went to go see a conventional doctor for my skin ever, because I just felt so defeated, and I had just had it with feeling kind of let down by the conventional medical system of how to heal my skin long term. So yeah, from that point, my skin was I was still able to live with it for a couple more years even. And then in 2017, toward the end of nursing school, pretty much the same thing was happening again, that my eczema just started really, really ramping up, and to a point that it became unlivable now. So that was what kind of pushed me to go a completely opposite route of what I had ever tried in my life. And I began using traditional Chinese herbal medicine. I used acupuncture. I did a complete 180 with my diet, with my lifestyle. I was super aware of what I was putting on my skin now. I did so much work to stay on top of like my mental health and my emotional healing going through all this. It was a journey. Still is.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, so what do you think managed to help you the most during your journey? Because I know you went through a lot, and I think you healed a lot faster than most people I've seen who went through topical steroid withdrawal.
Mm-hmm. I think that in the beginning, I feel like years later now, a couple of years later, I feel like my healing, I can see it kind of in big phases, like big chunks. So at first, I feel like it was a lot about the physical healing. And of course, there was so much mental, emotional, even like spiritual stress on top of that. But a lot of it was about the physical because it's so present and it's so close to you all the time that like the physical pain just wipes every other concern out of your mind. So what helped me the most through that was I think was my Chinese herbalist, and continuing with Chinese herbs for about a year. That helped so much with just the progression of shedding all of those layers of years of eczema through going through topical steroid withdrawal. And it was definitely painful, but I think me being so consistent with that helped a ton. And then second to that, I would say definitely diet change. Just cutting out things like gluten, dairy, pretty much all animal products, and being really strict with it in the beginning. And after that, what kind of followed was a lot of the emotional stressors that I learned to cope with, which took a lot of trial and error and time. But what helps so much with like just my emotional and mental health, of course, number one is having like an amazing support system. Finding your group coaching program definitely helped. And little things that I was able to do on my own and on a daily basis. Number one is meditation. And number two is just practicing mindfulness and gratitude in everything that I did and that I do now.
Yeah, and I want to dive into that for sure. And I just also want to quickly mention that I think your boyfriend at that time, he was really, really sweet. And he actually messaged me because he wanted to, help you join the program, like my 8-week group coaching program. And I just thought that was so sweet that he actually helped you join and helped you like actually paid for your registration, and even for you, he basically paid for your for you to help you heal. And I just thought that was so sweet and just such a thoughtful thing.
Yeah, I actually have a funny story, like a side note about that, that's actually really relevant to like emotional and mental healing through this. So my boyfriend at the time is who found Abby's group coaching program online. And at that point, I remember I was at like the lowest mental and emotional like canyon I had ever been ever. I could never imagine feeling that in my life. And he found your group online and he was telling me about it. And I remember I was just feeling so distraught, in so much pain and so depressed that I like wasn't even listening, because I was just like, I just felt so hopeless that I felt like I can't even try one more thing. I've already tried every single thing. Like nothing is going to push me to try even more. Like I just felt so done that I actually really needed someone to like push me to do it, and just like make it so easy for me. And once I kind of like stepped through that door of, that there is this whole other world of a way to heal your skin, and a lot to focus on your emotional and mental well-being, then that like from there is when it was just an uptick to definitely still a lot of up and downs, but that is what like really pushed me out of that rut that I was in at that time.
And I think a lot of us, like we've tried so many things that we just feel so hopeless. And I think, you're not the only one. Like a lot of us have tried so many things and it's just so hard. I know you also wanted to focus on talking about, some of the coping strategies that you've had, and maybe some go more in depth into some of the routines that you had. So I would love to hear more in depth about, some of the coping strategies that you mentioned.
Yeah, of course. So practicing mindfulness and gratitude now comes so naturally to me, but like rewind 2 years ago, it was something that I really had to be like consciously aware of in order to ingrain it into my way of being. And so one major thing that helped me to start meditating daily was to start using a meditation mobile app. And my favorite mobile app on meditation is Calm. I know a lot of people are also fans of Headspace, which is also a good one. But Calm is just like, I really like it. I like the interface, and I like that it connects a lot with nature, and even like sounds of nature and images of nature. I find it like especially calming. And what made using that app so easy to incorporate it into my daily life is that they have guided meditations that are only like 5 to 10 minutes long, depending on however much time you want to do at that time or however much time you have on your hands. And it's super easy. You can even think about it. You don't have to think about it as meditating. You can even think about it like listening to a podcast. Like you just throw it on and like lay back and let it play and like let it run through your ears, let it run through your mind and body. And just continuously doing that over and over, it starts to become like a part of your routine in your day. And I found that once I started doing it regularly, when I would get too busy to do it, I would actually start craving like, oh, I really need to meditate because I know how centered it would make me feel. And I know how much anxiety it would help ease.
So I guess it's almost like when you start eating healthy food, you start to actually crave it more, and you start to get used to it.
Yeah.
And one thing I'm actually also really interested in is hearing about how it was having topical steroid withdrawal and healing from it while you were living with your boyfriend before, because I know that so many people will have questions about, how did you cope with that while you were recovering? Was it helpful to live with your partner, or was it harder? Did you feel like it was a burden or things like that?
A little bit of both, honestly. It was definitely helpful just to have someone there to physically help me with things like, doing laundry, washing vegetables and washing produce and cooking and things that I wasn't physically able to do because of like the eczema and just all my peeling skin prevented me from doing that. That was really helpful to have someone there. And
I remember one time you mentioned that you couldn't reach a cup, and that in itself was so hard. So thankfully for things like that, there's someone to help.
Yeah, definitely. And I was lucky enough that before I had lived with him, I had lived with a house full of roommates. So it was also kind of easy to ask people if I needed help for little things. But what made it a little easier to ask like a significant other was just because they were so much closer to like the pain that I was in, because I was so much more open with them as opposed to another friend. Just with like really what it felt like for me and how difficult simple things were.
Mm-hmm. And I guess in terms of were there any negatives as well in terms of, I guess, were things harder for him or yourself?
I would say definitely. You mentioned the word burden earlier. That was one thing that I really, really struggled with. It's so hard, even with someone that loves you so much, it's so hard to not feel like a burden sometimes when physically you feel like you can barely do anything and like you need help to do every single little thing. When even like getting out of bed and like dusting your bed off with all of the skin flakes, like that's painful. Reaching a cup off the shelf, like little things like that. It's hard not to feel like a burden sometimes. And what did help me cope through that was just voicing exactly that, how I felt about that to my partner at the time, and just saying, like, I know that you do want to help me, but I feel bad sometimes. And just having an open dialogue about it really does help, because then you can also, hear how they're feeling. Because sometimes they're like caregiver burnout is definitely a real thing. So it's just good to kind of just vent all of that out into the open.
I like how you termed that caregiver burnout. And I think that's such a great term because, I know that my husband felt exactly the same way too, especially, when you throw a kid in the picture, it's even more work. So I definitely struggled with just feeling like a big burden to him. And, I never want to actually be a burden to anyone, but I feel like in those flares, like the deepest flares, like there are times when we just need that extra support.
Yeah.
And then when we get out of that phase, we're more capable to do more things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, I want to go back to some of the strategies that you mentioned and, the things that have really helped you as well, because I know, you also, around the time you're healing, you also became you graduated and became a registered nurse. So you were working like 12-hour shifts.
Mm-hmm. That was really hard. That was so hard, but thankfully, just by the luck of my life, the timeline, that things worked out. I was able to just barely do it. But I mean, the more that I invested in like my healing process and really committing to, the changes that I had made, then slowly but surely, like I did, it was easier. And even now, like a year later, there are still things that I am kind of coping with that began like a year ago, that kind of just dragged out as just part of the healing process.
And were you able to practice any of your coping strategies at work during your 12-hour shifts?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So one big thing that I had learned about anxiety and panic attacks, going through my own healing journey, was my favorite way to cope with them. So panic attacks became kind of, I don't want to say common thing, but definitely not uncommon. So one thing that really helps during a panic attack or like a really intense anxiety attack is to slow your breathing. But sometimes when you're like hyperventilating, then that is so hard to do. So what helps is to choose what's called a grounding object. So you can choose like one object in your surrounding, and just like focus all of your attention onto it, and just note like its color, its size, its shape, everything about it pretty much. And zoning in on the details of one thing helps to kind of sink your body into the intention of like slowing down and just focusing. So I definitely practice that a lot during my work days, like when I would be in a situation where like I couldn't just like drop everything and go. So that definitely helped a lot.
Mm. And then how did you cope with needing to scratch at work?
Oh man, a lot of trips to the restroom.
That's how I did it too when I was working.
Yeah, that's like what I hear most or like all people do when they're kind of stuck in a scratching fit at work. Usually, yeah. I mean, it's like private. It's kind of easily accessible, hopefully. Yeah, but what did get really difficult is when like you have to scratch so often that it's like I can't keep going to the restroom so often, and especially in like my line of work, it's really, really difficult sometimes to just like drop everything and go, even if you need to go to the bathroom. Like sometimes, your work just calls for you to stay and focus on what you're doing before you can tend to other things.
So how did you deal with that? Like, did you have to let your manager be aware of your condition?
I did let them know to an extent, but for the most part, I did a lot of what helped the most during those times was a lot of deep breathing, and just like focusing on keeping my anxiety calm, even during times that I was feeling really itchy.
And I think that's actually, I think that's great that you mentioned that, because when you go through something really tough, it really trains you to find solutions that will help you when you're pushed to the limit. And so, that's really, really great that you develop strategies like meditation, and just focusing on certain objects, and also, like you just mentioned, the deep breathing. And I think that's all very, very helpful.
Mm-hmm. And things like, even like practicing gratitude helped a lot too. Like, I would think a lot to myself, like even when I was like really itchy, but I couldn't just leave what I was doing. Even just, or I would be like leaving a long day, on a long night at work, and like my wrists and my arms would be like almost literally bloodied up because of like 12 hours of movement, when like even the slightest movement hurts. It really like tears your skin up. And just telling myself like, okay, well, instead of focusing on this hurts so much, I hate this, then I can choose to be thankful and to voice like my gratitude that at least I've healed to this point that I can actually work now. Because even months before that, like there's no way that I would have been able to get a job or to get out of bed to work even like a 12-hour shift. And now like, look at me. Yeah, I might be in pain, but like things like that, even if you still are in pain, they're signs of healing. You just kind of have to find them and focus on them.
Yeah, and I think that's so great, because one thing that we always remind people in our group is that you might not always realize or recognize your progress because you're living in it all the time. Yeah. And, the important thing is to celebrate the little victories, take pictures. You don't have to look at it, but then when you're far enough in your healing journey, you can look back and you can remember what it was like before. And you can remember things that you could do yesterday things that you can do today that you couldn't do yesterday. For example, like Cassie mentioned, she couldn't even reach to get a cup. For me, it was, little things like, it really hurts so much just to move and exercise. And today it finally doesn't. So just celebrating the little victories. And I think one thing I want to share that for myself, one thing that really, really helped a lot was visualization. So just visualizing my healing every day and picturing what it would look like when I was fully healed, and visualizing what my friends and family would say when they saw me fully healed, and just feeling the feelings of it. I know Tony Robbins, he shares that it really helps your brain achieve things faster when you visualize. So hopefully that tip will help some of you out there as well.
I have a note to say. It's like related to visualization that helped me a lot too, that I wasn't able to experience the benefits of it until like maybe even a year into like from the point I started healing. But affirmations and saying affirmations out loud, I had like from the beginning, I had known like, yeah, they're powerful. I know, I get it. But I remember our other coach, Jen Hall, one affirmation that she always like promoted was to say, I am healing, or I am healed.
At the end of each call, we would always say, we would put our hand over our heart, and we would say, I love my body, I thank my body, I am loved, and I am healing. And yeah, you're right. It's just such a wonderful mantra to say and to, remember for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. But I remember even in the beginning, like really, really early stages of my healing journey, I knew how beneficial that was, and I like understood the whole logic behind it. But the point that I was emotionally and mentally, personally, I actually couldn't bring myself to say those words out loud. And I would actually try to speak it, but something inside of me like was actually stopped. Like I just became mute every time I tried to speak those words out, because I felt like it was so untrue that I couldn't even speak it out of my mouth.
That's so interesting.
And then this is it relates to how you said, you're always in the progress of healing. And so it's like the little things that make you realize, whoa, I'm healing. Then maybe about like 6 to 12 months later, after I had like really committed to this whole healing journey, I remember I was writing in my journal and I wrote without thinking, I am healed.
Wow.
And then I remember when I saw those words on the page, I was like, whoa, I've never let that come out of me before. And then I read it out loud for the first time ever, I was able to say it. And even just having that experience was so powerful that I could not believe how powerful just speaking affirmations into the universe and, into existence really are.
And it's your skin looks amazing now. Like for people who are listening on audio and can't see your skin, it really looks so good. Like you can't even tell that you went through topical steroid withdrawal. Like you don't even have like scars.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just looks so good.
Yeah, it does. I feel really good about it. My arms, like the rest of my body, is a little of a different story, but it does really feel good to see the difference like in your skin. And yeah, when people tell you, like people in your life that see you in person, they tell you, like your skin is looking better, like it's looking good. Yeah, it feels good.
And I think for myself, like when I first tried to do visualization, like I just couldn't visualize myself healed. Like it was so hard. And I know a lot of people struggle with that too, because you feel like it's been so hard and you just feel like, how can you picture yourself healed? Like it just seems so unattainable. Yeah, but the fact that we can rewire our brain and really change the way we think, the way we're healing, and it's just amazing that you're finally able to even say out loud your affirmation.
Yeah, and one thing that I picked up recently that I actually wish I had implemented this like years ago is so now I actually have affirmations written out like all over my house, all over my like in my bedroom, in my living space, and even in my bathroom, because I like have experienced personally how powerful they are. I wish I knew before to write on my mirror. Just to write a reminder or write an affirmation, even if you don't put it in first person, like you're the one saying it, even just seeing those words constantly every time, like at least once a day, every time you look in the mirror, every time you go to the bathroom. It's so powerful, the effects that it can have on you mentally and emotionally.
And also, I used to follow Louise Hay a lot, and she teaches mirror work where you just look in the mirror directly at your eyes and yourself, and you just stare at yourself and you say, I am loved, I'm healing, and you just say like 3-word phrases. And it is the most touching thing ever. And I just broke down a lot, and I just felt like a wave of emotions come out of me, like guilt about how much I went through, and all this love as well for myself. And it's really powerful when you look in the mirror.
Yeah, I've experienced similar things too, and I would say like even more so with eczema and like topical steroid withdrawal, because it's such a visual illness that like really looking at yourself and it might feel silly at first, but like connecting with like seeing your physical self and saying loving words to yourself, like it helps so much.
Yeah, it's all about the words, the way you see yourself. Now tell me more about this sound healing that you got into as well. Is there like, I've read articles before that, this, because sound frequency actually can change your brain waves. And I've read things about different healing actually has like different frequencies. So for example, like thyroid healing and, just releasing like negative trauma in your life. And like even things like boosting the immune system, they all have different frequencies, which I've actually been looking into a lot, called binaural beats. So I know there is some science behind it, but I was wondering, is there any science behind it that you could also share more with our listeners?
Yes. Well, I will start with kind of a disclaimer that there is like very limited science that supports like sound therapy, especially on a large scale clinical basis, just because, I mean, simply put, that's not where a lot of money will come from. So, but it is a practice that has been that has existed for thousands of years, for about like at least like 2,500 years. And I think the first instruments that were used for sound therapy were made like 5,000 years ago. So even though scientific evidence is limited at this time, like it is a very long practice tradition that does still have some scientific support, but that's the reason for like limited research around it.
I'm not sure if I'm right in remembering this, but I was actually looking up scientific articles on the science behind sound healing. And I think I saw something like where sound healing actually has helped cases of people with cancer. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that, but I know, like, you know, sound therapy really just, even music in general changes our mood and how we feel.
A lot of the benefits of sound healing, we can see a lot of physical benefit because of like a vibrational frequency and audio tone. It does affect like our cells physically, but even more so because of the benefits that we receive emotionally and like sometimes even spiritually and like definitely like psychologically, mentally, all of that. They're so profound that the healing that we receive in that space like is more of the reason why we can heal more physically. It's kind of like all hand in hand, because healing is not like an isolated thing. It's not like you only heal your physical body. It's like always an emotional, mental, like integrated healing process.
And I actually want to share something interesting because I know that, you know, you've tried my Conqueror, the dry skin soothing balm, and I also have my Conqueror bath treatment, but I'm adding products to my Conqueror line, and I'm actually coming out with some new products that I'm launching, things like body wash, lotion, and like, you know, calming itch spray. And the really cool thing about these new products is that I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Emoto. So he's that Japanese. He's the Japanese guy who did a lot of experiments where he found that when people spoke different words and sounds over like things like rice and water, it really changed the chemical structure of them. So for example, rice, he had like three different rice jars where one of them he said nothing to, and then the other one, it was labeled I hate you, and then another one was labeled I love you. And the one that was I think I hate you, and the one that was left alone, like they both didn't do well, and they were both rotting. One of them was rotting, and the one that said I love you, that one was the one that was thriving. And even if you look at water crystals under microscope, you'll notice that sound and loving music, and when you praise it or thank it or say loving things, it will make such beautiful crystals. Like it'll look like beautiful snowflakes. You can look it up online and do Google image search for it. And then when they said like really bad words over it, like I hate you, I want to kill you, or they mentioned the word Hitler or had like bad sounds over it, you know, those the water crystals would be so like disjointed, and like it would look
muddy.
Yeah, like a bit ugly. So it's so interesting. So what I was trying to get to was the new products that I'm creating. A lot of it is actually based on Dr. Emoto's work. So the water and some of the ingredients that are put into these new products that I'm creating, it will actually be based on Dr. Emoto's work, where it will actually have beautiful sounds playing over it. I think even for like 9 hours a day, it's just like loving music played over the ingredients that you're going to use and put on your body. And so that's something that I feel really good about, is that, the ingredients are not just, picked with love, and not just organic, but then, you know, loving words and thoughts are spoken over it, so that when you use it, you're using something that has been fed with love, and that has been fed so that we can help you on your journey as well. So tell me more about this sound healing as well and your experiences with it.
It's so funny that you mentioned Dr. Emoto, because I hold like public sound healing sessions. And every time that I do a sound healing session, like the first 10 minutes, I do like kind of an intro of the science behind sound healing for skeptics. And Dr. Emoto, his work is like a major thing that I talk about.
That's awesome.
That's so funny. For good reason, because sound healing, what I've learned is that a basic kind of equation that you can think of how sound healing works is frequency plus intention equals healing. So frequency is like the actual vibration or the actual audio. So kind of like we were talking about earlier, how vibration can help like heal the cells in our body, and kind of an overview of how that works is that, I mean, conventional medicine, the way that it approaches health in general is kind of like to kill off the bad things so that therefore what you're left with is your health. But opposed to that, like alternative and more holistic approach in general is more about building up your health so that you are better equipped to overcome any illness or disease that you come across. So same with sound healing, it's more about like building up your health and strengthening your body versus taking anything away or subtraction. So when we think about like your body in terms of sound, then you can kind of think about it like if you're in perfect health, then all of your organs and the cells in your body are performing like a beautiful in-tune orchestra. Everyone is like, playing exactly what they're playing. Everything is moving smoothly. And when you become ill or are diseased or have eczema, anything like that, then think about that like one instrument is out of tune, or even like a group of instruments is out of tune. And that's kind of like the orchestra can still play, but it's going to sound kind of off. So the way that sound healing works through frequency is kind of to use that vibration from whatever healing instruments that you choose to use to kind of retune that out of tune portion of your body so that your whole body can perform, like be in a harmonized state again, and move you more toward optimal health.
And that's very interesting because I think what happens is in our bodies, our cells store a lot of trauma too.
Yeah, they do.
So I think it's very interesting, that the sound healing has the ability, and not just sound, but even music has the ability to change the way we feel about things and to help release emotion.
Yeah, a big thing. So the second part of that equation, which is frequency plus intention, this is kind of goes back to Dr. Emoto's work, is like the actual vibration, yes, is important, but the intention behind it is so profound too. So like, just like you're saying that different, like say 2 glasses of water can be like, they crystallize differently based on the intention that they're labeled with, like a loving intention versus a hating intention, that actually changes like their cellular structure and how it physically appears. And it kind of, I mean, even to make it even like more relatable or more understandable for people, like think about seeing like an old friend at a party or something. You can say the same exact words, like say like, hey, it's so great to see you, with very different intention, and the receiver will receive it and therefore feel very differently depending on the intention behind your words. So if you greet them like, oh, hey, it's so great to see you, but like there's like a sarcastic like undertone to it, imagine how that would make you feel versus being greeted like, oh, hey, it's so great to see you. Like the intention is so different, even though the frequency or the words are exactly the same. That's why like intention is just as important as like the vibration in terms of healing, in terms of like your end product.
And yeah, it's just so amazing to see you share this, because, I've watched you grow from, when you're first, suffering a lot from your skin flares. And I still remember that first time you're on the first call and you said, wow, I never knew this is, I didn't expect what would happen, but, I'm so thankful that I joined this. And I remember you saying, I was texting my sister and telling her about this. Yeah. And she said, where was I when I had flare-ups?
Yeah.
And so, it's just so amazing to see you grow into it's like you've grown into this beautiful butterfly, and you're able to help people through what you've gone through.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of things that I've come up through my own healing journey over like the past couple of years, just new coping strategies, like they come up as ideas like, wow, where was this how come I didn't know about this a year ago? Like that's, more reason why I do want to like share through my blog and through sound healing. Yeah, just to make it easier for people, make things more accessible.
So for your sound healing, can you share with our listeners like some of the things that the people that you've worked with have experienced during the sessions?
Oh yeah, of course. So what happens, like logistically and physically, what happens during a sound healing is like you will have a sound healer, so that would be me, and then however many participants. Usually you'll lay on the floor like on a yoga mat, like as if imagine in a yoga studio, and you lay just comfortably, and it's kind of a meditative experience. So it depends on the sound healer. Sometimes they utilize like guided meditation in the beginning or the end to kind of help ease you into that relaxed state. So once I do that, then I have a handful of instruments that I like using. My primary instrument that is really like calls to me the most is crystal singing bowls. So I use 7 of them along with a handful of different chimes and an ocean drum. And the sound session would last anywhere from like 25 minutes to an hour. Like it can go as long as the participant wishes. I usually end each session with a guided meditation to bring the participants back to the room and kind of ground them as well. And then we'll have like a little discussion regarding like, what did you experience? Did anything come up for you? And it's amazing to hear like just the wide like variety, the whole spectrum of from people that have like a lot of experience with sound healing and sound baths and like receiving, and like first timers, people that are like super into spirituality, people that are really skeptical that are not at all. But across the board, everyone that I've worked with has had a really great experience and has shared that they would love to have that experience again. And one thing that one of my participants shared with me is that he described it as like kind of like getting a massage. And he even said like in the beginning, he didn't feel like he had like this big thing that he wanted or needed to heal. But it was still felt very beneficial for him by the end, because it felt like a really, really big form of self-care.
That's so great. And I'm interested in knowing, what goes through your mind while you're actually doing the sound healing session? Like, are you participating and you're actually receiving and feeling healing yourself?
Yeah, kind of both. So I definitely do. At the beginning of my sessions, I have all of my participants set an intention for themselves and share however much if they want to of like what that might entail for them or anything that they personally are going through. Because that does help me as a sound healer to like keep their intention in my mind as I'm like giving sound. So, I mean, yeah, like I said before, like how important intention is. So just like to get more specific, it really is helpful. And even if people aren't able to share or like don't wish to share beforehand, then the whole time I just feel very, very present with the people that have come to me for these certain reasons of, for healing or for self-care. And that presence kind of sinks into myself definitely and into everyone else and into like the entire room. It's a very, very cool feeling that is like it's like almost palpable that after the session, it's like everyone is moving very much on the same wavelength and has had a very like this pleasant, calming, like reduced anxiety, refreshed feeling. Yeah.
I think it reminds me of Tony Robbins. He says that when he prays and meditates, he also sends love around the room and to his friends. And I think, that really changes things. And, I go to church, and one thing that they've taught us is to also do like soaking music. we're soaking worship music, where we basically will lie down and like we'll just play like some soaking like instrumental worship music, and just like let God's love soak in us and fill us as well. And I guess in a way it's almost similar with like just the soaking and letting the music just change our lives.
Yeah, it's kind of just like I think the thought of like emitting love into the room and into others, and like emitting like healing, and the thoughts of healing and like the feeling of healing, that it's just so powerful.
And then so do you do these only in person, or you do them online as well?
At this time, I do them only in person. I'm based in Los Angeles, so just in the area. In a few months, I think I am going to be able to expand to at least like California-ish, because sometimes I am down in San Diego, so SoCal. Sometimes I am up in the Bay Area, so like San Francisco, Oakland. Yeah.
And that's just so amazing, again, to watch you grow and just see how far you've come. And yeah, it always touches my heart whenever I see people who experience so much healing and change, and who we've been able to watch grow from our group. So yeah, I just want to ask, are there any last words you want to share, last words of advice for anyone who's going through severe eczema or topical steroid withdrawal?
I mean, kind of to piggyback off you, that so much like healing and growth can happen. It's very possible. Yeah, I just want to leave everyone with the words to know that healing is so possible. I mean, at the beginning of this call, I was telling a story about how I was in like a dark, deep canyon that I literally did not think that I could heal from that ever. And now, like, yes, it might take you 1, 2, 3, however many years, even months. But yeah, healing it's definitely a day-to-day thing, but it's something that as more time passes, like you're going to really be able to see those results and how powerful your body has become. Powering through.
Yeah, I used to have really deep, dark thoughts too, and very suicidal thoughts. And I remember, I lived next to a window that would open up, and I lived on the 17th floor, like a really tall building. When I was growing up in Hong Kong, and during my worst flares, like I thought of like the darkest thoughts, about what I could do with that window that was next to me. But I'm just so thankful that, nothing happened, and that, God kept us safe, and eventually, we've been able to turn our stories around. And you're right. We can really turn things around, and not to lose hope or give up.
Yeah. And even like remembering those dark thoughts, like we've going through severe eczema and topical steroid withdrawal, like we have definitely all had dark thoughts across, like there is a spectrum of dark thoughts, and we've all been somewhere on that spectrum. Remembering that as you go through your healing process, like remembering that is important, because it's a roller coaster. Yeah. And even now, like you might see me today and be like, oh wow, her skin is so like, it looks so good, it looks so clear, she seems like she's in really high spirits. I mean, she's helping other people heal themselves. But I mean, it's such an ongoing process, and I still have eczema, and I still have bad skin days. I have like days that I still deal with depression, anxiety. It's an ongoing thing, and the more time that passes and the more that you just keep pushing through, then you're going to be better equipped, and your toolbox is just going to keep like getting more and more full of coping mechanisms to help you live the life that you once thought never was possible, but is so attainable.
Yeah, I love the way that you put it. Also, there was something else that I wanted to mention, but I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you, how long did your healing take? Because I know your healing took faster than a lot of people did.
Mm-hmm. I think it's hard to say, but I would say
like I remember after you joined our program, within 1 month, there was such a noticeable difference in your photos, and they're still on my group coaching website, in case anyone wants to check it out, at conquereczemaacademy.com. Like your photos 1 month before and 1 month after they're crazy. It's like it went from red to like a whole different skin.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember those photos, but even since then, like
it's healed so much more.
Yeah, because I would even say like that was like it's such a roller coaster that was like my first up, and then after that was like a million up and downs. That like sometimes your skin will even like revert back to like what it used to look like when you were having a really hard time. But just knowing that like it's temporary, ups and downs are going to happen. Mm-hmm. It just feels like, I think because everything is so up and down, that's why it's hard to put a timeline on it. But I would say that the 1 year that I did Chinese medicine and I was really committed to it, Chinese medicine and acupuncture, my skin healed tremendously. And when I even say healed, I wouldn't say that it felt a lot better, because that healing was a lot of shedding and it was still a lot of pain. And even after that year, I was still shedding a ton. But during, the shedding is good, it's getting all of that old eczema out of your body. And after that, I would say I was still heavily shedding for at least like 8 months. And then after that was still ongoing, but more with a focus on like psychological, emotional, mental healing from all of that, like years of trauma.
And if anyone wants to check out my last episode, I actually interviewed a traditional Chinese medicine dermatologist. So that was a really good episode. And I also want to mention not to compare your healing with anyone else, because everyone's healing times will be so different. Everything that you're going through will be different from someone else. So, everyone's chapter will be different. So don't compare yourself with anyone else. Yeah. And so, Cassie, where can people find you if they want to get in contact with you or reach you?
Yeah, of course. You can check me out at my website, thenaturalisticnurse.com. And you can also follow me on Instagram at thenatnurse. That's at the NAT nurse, short for the naturalistic nurse. And I'm also on YouTube under both of those names. And I produce content pretty regularly. So I think connecting with me on Instagram is probably the best way to get like your day-to-day updates. And you can check out like my blog, more about my journey, my videos, and more about sound healing on my website.
Thank you so much. It was so great talking to you.
Thank you too. This was really fun.
Thanks for listening to the Eczema Podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass it along to your friends. Visit eczemaconquerors.com for more articles and tips. Thanks for listening.